Hi and good morning. This is Eden Gordon Hill, and you are back here with Common Sense America. Thank you so much for being here on this amazing morning. And we are living in the land of the free and the home of the brave. I am so glad that I get to sit here and bring truth to you. We are here, and I have the great honor to introduce you to a new feature here at Common Sense America. We have Curtis Sliwa. He is the host of Rip and Bread, 77 WABC's New York midday show. And you must follow him on Twitter. I have it going across the screen. Curtis, thank you so much for being here. What an honor to have you.
Anytime. I'm like lens slice. You put a camera in front of me and you got me.
Well, I'll tell you what, I love what you're doing for the great city of New York, my home, sweet home. And I am so glad to talk with you about the state of the city and what is happening in the city. But first and foremost, I want to talk about the Guardian Angels and what you've been doing since 1979, and more recently, the Perv Busters. When I saw that on the Guardian Angels website, and I just saw all these resilient, powerful women getting on the subways and really protecting, because as you say on your site, sex crimes in the subway are now up by 50%. Talk to me about that.
Well, a lot of times, guys, they have no idea what women have to go through because they're not necessarily subject to the same kind of perversions that women are confronted with. So, for instance, let's take the subway.
Right.
There are a lot of pervs who ride the subway every day, the same line, the same time, the same place. And they're going up and down, and they're looking for women to abuse. And many of them are out there to prove to these women that they're not suffering from erectile dysfunction. And everybody just they close their eyes. Guys, they don't come to the aid of women. Women are terrified, they're traumatized. Other women fight back. Other women film it. And oftentimes they'll photo the individual. And they get almost nowhere with the police at times because they don't view this as a top felony crime like they would crimes of violence, whereas we take it very seriously, because if women don't use the subways, that means they're not going to go to the restaurants and bars, they're not going to go to nightlife, and you're going to have a city that is paralyzed like our city right now, that just can't seem to get back on track after the lockdown and pandemic of 2020. And a lot of it is that a woman will get on a subway, which is the veins and arteries of the city.
Right.
They cannot always afford a cab ride. Cab fares have just gone up. Uber fares have gone up. You got to take a reverse mortgage, a payday loan. So they're going to use the subways. But if women feel unsafe, feel they're preyed upon, perved upon, they're not coming back into the subways. And so, because it's generally men who make the decisions about policing, with little regard to what pervs do, who are predicate offenders. I mean, there's some of these guys, 50, 60 arrests for exposure, for coming on to women, for rubbing up against them, and nothing gets done.
Right.
And so we created the Perv Busters. These are female guardian angels who are dedicated to taking the information that sometimes we get. Some of these women who have been violated don't even trust that the police are going to adequately follow up on the information they provide. So they hedge their bets and they give it to the guardian angels too. And then the female guardian angels assemble and they patrol. And they give out warning flyers to the females who are riding or waiting on the platform about this particular predator who has been stalking women and violating women in the area. They generally have the picture, whatever information we might have about them. And the women couldn't be more happy that somebody is looking out after them. Meantime, you got cameras everywhere. So the police are dealing with things after the fact.
Right.
The guardian angels deal with things preemptively. And remember, if the women are not safe, they're not coming back to work. 50% of the office buildings are empty Monday through Friday. And nightlife,
it's gone downhill.
Going to require a lot for it to get back on track. And without the women, there can be no nightlife.
I feel like you almost answered my question. I was going to say, are there certain parts of the city that really need the Perv Busters more so than others? When I lived in the city, I lived in I called it Middle Earth. Middle Village, Queens, and then I lived on the Upper West Side and the Upper East Side. And, I felt very safe in those parts of town. And then I would go down to the Bowery and work at the Bowery Mission. And then I would be over by some of the news studios and felt very safe. But that was in 2010 and 2011. So, going off of that, and as I traveled back and forth to the city for work. So I wanted to go to the city for the holidays. And, my mother, who raised me in the city, she's like, I don't want to go into the city anymore. I said, why? She said, it's unsafe. And I said, you know what? I want to get around this mentality. So let me ask you this: for travelers, for out of towners, or for those who have lived in that city, breathed that city, and still love that city, what do you say to us? And for me, as I have to come into the city for work, are there certain spots that are safer than others? And do I just give you a call or, the Perv Busters and say, hey, I'm coming to the city and this is where I got to go?
No, unfortunately, we don't offer that kind of service. That would be more like a private security service.
Yeah.
What you have to do based on the reality of crime in the subways, crime in the streets, knowing that women are most often the primary target of thugs, of thugettes, of pervs, of sexual assaulters, more so than men, is you have to restrict your travel. Not eliminate it, restrict it. So, for instance, if you're coming in, what are the hours? You travel in the wee hours of the morning, you're subjecting yourself to more potential victimization. If you're going to ride in a train, don't ride in the last car. Don't ride in the first car. Try to ride where the conductor is in the middle, although that may be difficult to do. And most importantly, do not start fidgeting around with your phone. Take the earbuds out. Be alert because there are things that can be taking place that you won't be privy to because you're in your own little cone.
Right.
And you can't afford to do that. Now, a few years ago, you could.
Right.
When Giuliani was mayor, when Bloomberg was mayor, and the city was relatively safe, you could. But the moment de Blasio became the mayor and now Eric Adams, the swagger man with no plan, no, you have to take additional precautions. You have to travel. There's no doubt about it. The most affordable way and the quickest way are the subways or the buses.
Right.
But it's also the venues that generally you could end up, if not being violated or not having crime committed against you, you'll be so traumatized, you never want to come back again.
Yeah, agreed. Well, let's talk about Eric Adams. Let's talk about de Blasio and everything that happened during that administration and what's happening with the Adams administration, knowing that the State of the City is coming up January 26th, I believe, posted on his Twitter account. I listened to you on WABC and heard the rats and the rats and the rats and what is happening. And, I sat there and chuckled to myself because living in New York, I felt like the rats were my neighbors more than my neighbors. And so I sit there and say, I was chuckling ahead and I thought, you know what? And then he's talking about the rats that are taking over Brooklyn. But I thought politically and looking what's happening on Capitol Hill right now, as I'm sitting here watching the House floor, there's a lot of rats around there too. You can take it out as however you'd like to take it. So talk to me about the state of the city from the law enforcement standpoint, from the crime standpoint, and what is on the horizon to get the city out of this COVID, mentality, and where can we get the city back to what it was or even better?
Well, this is the biggest problem. The biggest problem is there's not going to be enough money this time around to do all the things that Eric Adams would like to do, nor will there be enough money in the state. Kathy Hochul is looking at a $16 billion debt. Eric Adams is facing a $10 billion debt, and they can't print up any more money in Washington. There's no more stimulus dollars. So reality is settling in. When it comes to public safety, because Eric Adams said he was going to be the law and order mayor, we have 34,000 police officers, down from 38,000. We're at a dangerous level. There's continued retirements, early retirements, and various municipal police forces are recruiting some of the men and women who have like 3 years of experience. So we've already invested in the development of police, about 100,000 per cadet to recruit them, to vet them, to train them, to graduate them. And then the first 3 years, they're developing their experience. And then other municipal police departments are swooping in and recruiting them away So now Eric Adams does not have the troops to be able to enforce public safety. Right now, they're on a schedule of overtime in the subways, along with the state subsidizing it. That's going to end the beginning of the year. So that's problem number one. Problem number two, we have these migrants flooding in.
Right.
And we're having to take from American homeless, Americans who are poor and impoverished. We're going to have to take off of their plate. We're going to have to take shelter away from them in order to give shelter to those who don't have to be here. You know, they're here because they have an opportunity to come. If I were them, I'd be here too. But the mayor has welcomed them, initially welcomed them with open arms. And they saw that on television. And so now everybody wants to come to Nueva York. Now he's saying the inn is full. The damage is done. And so we have 50,000 migrants, and every day more are pouring in. And we don't have the money to take care of them. And so who's going to end up having this be sacrificed in the process is regular Americans who are down on their luck or are poor and impoverished. So Eric Adams is facing a number of problems in which he doesn't have the money to deal with it. He doesn't know how to deal with it without the money. Most politicians don't. And we're in for a tailspin now. It's going to get worse before it gets better. But neither the governor or the mayor have addressed that issue, although the mayor has hinted at it in the beginning of the year. I'm not going to have the kind of budget that I had last year. Well, guess what? What are you going to do now? You're going to have to do more with less. And he's not used to that. Politicians are not used to doing more with less.
Exactly. A couple other things to say to that, to Eric Adams, and then also to what is happening to the great state of New York. And, you know, I sit there and say, Lee Zeldin, you were great candidates running for respected offices. And then I look at Santos. And I heard you talking about him on your show today. And I loved how you talked about, you know, a majority of Congress, they are Christians. Why aren't they, you know, just extend that olive branch, if you will. And you talked about the fact of nobody was talking to him and pretty much ignoring the guy. But also to the point that you had mentioned, should Lee Zeldin run for his seat? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, look, we're in an era of pathological liars. Our president is a pathological liar. Donald Trump is a pathological liar. But George Santos is the worst from beginning to end. There's nothing true about what this guy has said about his life. So instead of everybody saying, hey, we got to stop this because now people have more of a reason not to trust politicians, to think they're all thieves and they're all liars. I mean, let's face it, this George Santos sort of feeds that stereotype. Number two, there will be no opportunity for a Republican to win that district when, and it'll be sooner than later, that George Santos either resigns or he's forced out of office because he'll be indicted. And so any Republican trying to step up in the shadow of George Santos, the stigma, the stain, won't even be able to argue the first point. When right away the Democrats will say, well, look, it's just more Santos. So the guy who won the election in that area, and Santos benefited, he got more votes than the Democratic candidate, Kathy Hochul, is Lee Zeldin. He's from Long Island. He knows Long Island issues. He ran a marvelous campaign. Everybody after that campaign, even his enemies said, wow, you ran a really good campaign. He was focused. Crime. So if you were to step in and say, I'm going to run, I know which Democrat is laying in wait, and that's the former Congressman Tom Suozzi, who has never had a job in the private sector. He doesn't want to go to the private sector, but that would be a great political battle. Ideologically, they're two local guys. They grew up in Long Island. They know Long Island issues. Nobody can question that. They have a different way of approaching it. And I think the voters deserve that in the 3rd Congressional District.
Yeah. Okay. Next question. What are we going to do about all these rats? As I sit here and let's see. Oh, wait a second. They're on the 7th vote for Speaker of the House. What are we going to do about these rats up here in Capitol Hill that I used to work with and serve with? And what are we going to do about the literal rats in Brooklyn? Let's talk about rats.
Yeah, well, number one, I don't get bent out of shape that everybody isn't drinking the Kool-Aid for McCarthy. Clearly, he's losing votes, even with Trump stepping in yesterday and saying, let's all come together for McCarthy.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, there are a lot of men and women who serve in the House who don't like this guy, and they probably have some pretty damn good reasons.
Yeah.
So maybe it's time to look at another Republican candidate. What's the big deal? I mean, what? The Republicans can't survive without McCarthy? They'll survive. They'll have somebody else, maybe a Scalise, who I think, because not only was he a good congressman, but remember, he got shot on that softball field. He survived against all odds. I think everybody would say, yeah, okay, if not McCarthy, let's rally around Scalise. The Democrats, obviously, they're in the minority, but soon they'll be in the majority. It always happens. And then Hakeem Jeffries will be the speaker. And boy, that's going to be a headache. So I don't get all bent out of shape. It's like, look, nothing's going to change right now. Relax. Don't make it seem like if we don't elect McCarthy, the world is at an end. No, it's not. Let the process unfold. And if McCarthy cannot galvanize enough Republicans to vote for him, then he doesn't deserve to be Speaker of the House.
Mm-hmm. I think there's too many McCarthy, McDaniel, McConnell. I think there's too many of those. I think we just need, having served for 20 years on Capitol Hill and working under the Trump administration, we just need new blood. We do need seasoned blood, but I do also agree with term limits. And I had said on my show earlier this week, I just want to see them grow up a little bit. I have the respect for the body of what is happening, but I would just like to see some intelligence, and we the people put them there. We the people believe in them, and that's why we put them there. But please act appropriately. Act above reproach.
I think it starts at the top, and then it's a trickle down. We have the president again today will be at West Virginia preaching bipartisanship, just like he did as an inaugural last year, and it lasted all of 1 second.
Exactly.
Donald Trump has never believed in bipartisanship. So my view is out with the old, in with the new. New group of candidates, Democrats, Republicans. Obviously, DeSantis has his following, but maybe he can't stand up to the primary process. Let the process continue. I don't want to redo the election of 2020. Trump can't seem to escape that, and Joe Biden is impaired. This guy tells a story a week that's completely manufactured. And then when confronted, never apologize. Like, yeah, that was a lie. I mean, I'm done with these guys.
Right.
It's time that we move on. It's time for new leadership. It's time for a new generation. I'm a baby boomer. They're baby boomers. It's time for them to move aside.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for that, because I really respect and admire how you ran your campaign. And it is all about new leadership and what is ahead. Talk to me about, I know that we are just in the beginning of this new mayor and his administration, but talk to me about your visions for the city of New York with, obviously, your radio show with Guardian Angels. What else do you have on the forefront? What can my viewers who are getting to know you from this standpoint just know? How can they get involved? How can they support what is coming down the pike? And what is your vision for the city of New York?
Well, number one, as it was in the campaign against Eric Adams that I lost fair and square, my belief is we got to improve, not move, because the exodus continues. An unprecedented evacuation of New York State, the number one state losing population. Number two is California. And we see where they're going. People are going to Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, especially Florida.
Yeah, we're
Texas,
right here in
Tennessee.
we're right here in North Carolina. And my husband's retired veteran. And everywhere I look, it's New York, Nassau County, in our backyard. Right next door is Pennsylvania. No, I grew up in Pennsylvania and New York, and I love having them here. But they're, are they bringing their thoughts, their ideologies? Are they bringing that progressive agenda? No, we don't want that here. We welcome you here, but do we want that? No. So
I think what you're getting is not progressives leaving New York. They're staking their claim because they want people like yourself to leave, so that then they can turn the epicenter of capitalism, New York City, into the epicenter of socialism, and completely change the fabric of New York City. That's why I said we got to fight for what we know is right. Now, I recognize some people have to leave. They have no choice. They have families. It's a better quality of life, better public school systems. Okay, no problem. But there are others we can dig in. We can fight for what we know is right, because if Republicans and conservatives continue the flight that was encouraged by Andrew Evil Eyes Cuomo and then Hochul and then Eric Adams to say, hey, go back to Iowa, go back to Ohio. You weren't here in New York. It's like, this is nonsense. And then all of a sudden, when they realize that a lot of the people leaving are the taxpayers, and without the taxpayers, they can't subsidize the social services, then all of a sudden they want to put on the brakes and say, no, don't leave. Yeah. Well, the damage is done. Mm-hmm. And just in a simple case like what I was doing today, imagine you have a mayor who is trying to tackle a rat problem in the city of New York, which every mayor has tried to tackle. Mm-hmm. And nobody has ever claimed victory. You're never going to have victory against the rats. They've survived for decades. But you can balance it so that it's not overwhelming. Right. I mean, this mayor even has a rat problem at the home that he owns, the building that he owns. He's an absentee landlord. And he has been cited now 2 times in a row for rat infestation outside. So we know if they're outside, they're inside, and it's affected the whole block. It's not just his building. So we introduced feral cats. Mm-hmm. Feral cats are the Mother Nature's way of impeding the growth of rats and mice. You'll never eliminate them, but you'll have a balance. And that's what cats are there for. And so we're actually putting together a feral cat colony right outside the mayor's building, because he's admitted he's tried everything. He's tried pesticides, he's tried glue traps, he's tried the pellets, he's tried poisons. None of it's worked. Right. So he's knocked himself out. He admits he's frightened of rats. He's obsessed with rats, which a lot of New Yorkers are. So just step aside. This is what I do. My wife does. Guardian Angels do. We'll deal with it. Focus on other issues. But this is a guy who's omnipotent. He is pretentious, like all New Yorkers. They think they do it so much better. We saw the no cash bail disaster here in New York. Jersey has no cash bail. They've done it so much better. We should have just imitated what they did, but no, we're better than everyone else. And now when it comes to dealing with the rat problem, he thinks that he's got the answers and solutions, and he doesn't. And other cities do it better. Chicago now, which was the rat capital, they use feral cats.
I saw that.
Istanbul, they have thousands of feral cats that integrate with the population. Rome, which is the dirtiest city in the world, more garbage there than anywhere else. New York City is number 2. They have feral cats. So if it's working in all these places, why wouldn't you do it? Obviously, he doesn't have the desire to do it. Maybe he doesn't understand it. Maybe he has an aversion to cats. So we have moved in voluntarily, and we will do it. And hopefully he learns from our example.
How long will that take as you move in to do it? And what's that look like, timeline? And are there other parts of the city that really need what you guys are working on?
Oh, yeah. The worst area for rat infestation is Washington Heights, the very large tenements that have been there, almost some of those buildings 100 years. Yeah. The problem there is it's so bad, the rat infestation, that when you go on the major retail road, which is Broadway, many of the vendors, they have tables outside of their stores, and they sell openly rat poison. That's how bad the problem is. And there are a lot of restrictions to having cats. So if you have cats in a building, the Department of Buildings will come in and write up a summons to the landlord or whoever owns it, and then all of a sudden they want to get rid of the cats. If they go into a grocery store, bodega, or a supermarket, or a cafe, and there's a cat in there, what you call a bodega cat, they'll give them a $300 ticket. They should be encouraging this, not discouraging it, because the other measures have not worked. So it's basic common sense. Right. I understand they're not going to know how this works because they've never lived it. I and my wife and other members of the Guardian Angel Animal Protection Division, they deal with it. There are other, mostly women, not limited to women, but men who manage feral cat colonies all throughout the 5 boroughs of New York City. Oh, wow. And they have far less rats and mice than other residents. So now is the time. And we can do it at no cost to the taxpayers. Plus, he's looking for a rat czar, wants to pay them money. I told him, okay, knock yourself out, get a rat czar by day, AM, but that's not when the rats are out at play. Rats are nocturnal. Cats are nocturnal. The rats rule the night in New York City from 10 p.m. to 4 a.m. in the morning. Yeah. And that's when I'll be out at no cost to the taxpayers.
Wow. Well, let me end on this note. Any final words that we can, and my audience is primarily New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and a little bit here of the South. Where can we get involved with Guardian Angels? Obviously, they can follow you on your noonday show every day, WABC New York, midday show. But where can we help you with New York City Guardian Angels? Where can we get involved?
Well, the best thing to do is just go to www.guardianangels.org,
Okay.
guardianangels.org. It's the
Okay.
best way to contact us. Obviously, listening to WABC Monday through Fridays, 12 to 1. And then on the weekends, I'm on all the time. It's always broadcasting Curtis. So, and if you can't catch it live and locally, you catch it on the podcast at wabcradio.com. So you'll
Mhm.
definitely get you full of Curtis Sliwa at the end of the day.
Well, I love having you here on the show. Thank you so much for taking the time. And you know what? After Adam's State of the City, I'd love to have you back. If you have 5 minutes to just give me a breakdown, I am going to, stay tuned. I absolutely love the Cats Matiti group. I know that you are friends with them, and I worked with Rita Cosby over the years. So I'm just grateful that I get to now have you on this show and just really talk about the important issues and saving New York City, my home sweet home. So thank you for what you are doing.
My pleasure. Thank you.
God bless you. See you soon.
Take care.
Bye-bye.